Discover 12 spine-chilling Skinwalker encounters exposing terrifying secrets of haunted reservation. The lights flickered, and the trees whispered secrets in the wind. Emily's heart raced as she held her children tight. In suburban New Mexico, the mundane facade of safety peeled away, revealing a nightmare lurking just beneath. Skinwalkers, legend said, could shapeshift into anything or anyone, and as darkness fell, they began to rise. What was the truth? Could the Thompsons, their perfect neighbors, actually be hiding something far more sinister? Emily used to laugh off such tales, considering them mere tales spun by frightened children. Yet the fear in Lily's eyes, wide as saucers, spoke volumes. It sent a chill down her spine when her daughter recounted stories from school, tales of creatures that wore the faces of those you knew and creatures that could mimic their laughter and their smile. "Mom, they said Skinwalkers can even take form of your loved ones." Lily's voice trembled as she spoke, and Emily brushed it off, feigning casual indifference. But that evening, as the sun faded into a bruised sky, the air thickened with an unnerving heaviness. She heard faint giggling in the yard, the sound eerily familiar yet wrong. As shadows lengthened, she brushed it off as her mind playing tricks on her, the tinged remnants of a long night at the diner. Still, something in the air changed. Moments later, Emily caught sight of Mr. Thompson in the yard, watering his meticulously kept flowers. But as she blinked, he was gone, replaced by a chilling silence. Before she could process this, her phone buzzed, shattering the quiet horror. It was Max, her breathless son, on the line. "Mom. I saw a stranger, he's copying Mr. Thompson." Panic gripped at Emily's chest. Wheels screeched, and her heart thundered in her ears as she raced home, visions of the Thompsons' smile morphing into something foul. The front door swung wide, ajar, chilling her spine further. "Max!" Her voice cracked as she navigated the familiar hallway, dread tightening around her throat. Shadows danced. The air shifted. But all that returned was silence. Only the echoes of Max's laughter rang hollow in her memory. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Heart thumping, she dialed 911. But disbelief seeped in like poison through their remarks. Kids get lost sometimes. Just check the neighborhood." Their casual dismissal ignited the simmering paranoia creeping into her mind. What if the Thompsons had more than just a perfect lawn? Emily felt trapped, the walls closing in. As she ventured out once more, the shadows seemed to pulse with her fear, the trees warily observing her like a pack of hungry wolves. With urgency gnawing at her insides, Emily stumbled upon old town records, their eerie contents flickering like the strobe of a dying bulb. The Thompsons, once average, now painted with accusations of dark rituals tied to the folklore they once laughed at. The whispered legends thrummed a sinister tune, calling to her deeper fears. And just when the truth seemed graspable, a soft, haunting tune echoed from the trees, identical to the one Max always hummed. It reverberated through the chilling night air. Could it be him? A sickening terror gripped her, anchoring her in place as the shadows danced, weaving her dreams and nightmares together. In that moment, she realized the line between safety and terror had blurred, and the terrible truth was closer than she ever imagined. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she stared into the darkness, her heart pounding like a war drum. The haunting melody drifted closer, twisting through the night like a serpentine whisper, tugging at her instincts. Could that really be Max? Her son? Or was it something far darker? Rushing toward the sound, she fought against the grip of dread wrapping around her. Each step felt heavier, as if the ground itself conspired to drag her down, a twisted invitation to join the shadows. The trees towered above her, their gnarled branches reaching out, contorting into sinister shapes, their rustling leaves echoing malicious secrets. "Max!" she called, her voice trembling in the night air. "Where are you?" Panic clawed at her throat as the melody shifted, morphing into a twisted laugh, brittle and vacant. It was wrong in every way. Every fiber of her being screamed to run, yet a magnetic force pulled her deeper into the heart of the creeping darkness. The faint giggling morphed again, intertwining with the whispers from the wind, echoing her worst fears. Was someone in the trees? Was Mr. Thompson still in the yard, lurking like a predator? Anxiety gripped her heart like a vice. She stumbled, caught herself, then pushed onward, her pulse racing. Suddenly, she halted. A figure emerged from the shadows, barely illuminated by the flickering streetlights. It stood eerily still, facing away from her. The shape seemed to shimmer, another play of the light, perhaps. Her mind fought against the dark tendrils of paranoia wrapping around her. "Max?" She ventured again, her voice barely a whisper. A low chuckle echoed back, and she felt ice trickle down her spine. It wasn't Max. The figure turned slowly, its face momentarily cast in shadow. But then the light caught its features, Max's face. Her stomach dropped. It wore an expression she had never seen on her son before. It was hollow, devoid of warmth or spirit, an imitation of her child that sent shudders through her core. No. Emily backed away, her instincts screaming for her to run. "You're not him. Mommy!" It called, the voice twisting sweetly, yet layered with something grotesque. "Come play with us." Emily's mind raced as she recalled the stories. It was all too real. Skinwalkers. Creatures that stole faces and voices. Her neighbor was supposed to be the perfect family in the safest community. She was losing her grip on reality, the world around her blurring with terror. Bracing herself, Emily turned on her heel and sprinted back toward the house. She needed to reach safety, but fear twisted at her like a noose as she glanced back. The figure remained still, just staring, a cruel grin mocking her in the darkness. The front door loomed ahead, and she burst inside, slamming it closed behind her. The familiar hallway felt suffocating. Their home had always meant safety. Now, every creak of the floorboard echoed like a death knell. "Max?" Her voice rang out like a siren, but darkness wrapped around her, suppressing any glimmer of hope. She desperately checked rooms one by one, searching for that spark of life, a welcoming laugh, a reassuring hug. Instead, an oppressive silence pressed back against her, chilling her bones. The chilling sense of being watched settled on her like a heavy weight. She stumbled upon the living room and froze. The Thompsons' backyard dangled just outside her window, shadows shifting behind the perfectly manicured fence. She caught a glimpse of Mr. Thompson. He stood motionless, facing her, his smile stretching impossibly wide across his face. And then she saw it, a flicker of familiar laughter, a haunting mimicry of what once was, filling her with icy dread. The front yard suddenly exploded with movement. The Thompsons and their children appeared in rapid succession, a macabre gathering outside, each wearing a grin that sent shivers down Emily's spine. They all looked so familiar. So wrong. "Mommy." Her heart sank as another voice chimed in from behind her, echoing that ghostly tune. It was Max, stepping into sight at last. But something was different. His eyes held a haunting glint, unrecognizable and sinister as he tilted his head. A shadow loomed over them both, marking her next decision. Would she hold on to fear or face the nightmare head-on? As the hairs on her neck stood tall, she felt the veil of safety fully unravel. Emily's heart raced as she braced herself for what lay ahead. Could she trust the son she finally saw before her, or was there something more terrifying in his reflection? The door slammed open behind her, laughter spilling into the home with a rancid sweetness. "Come play, Mommy." We missed you. She had to choose. Would she face the frightful truth or clasp her heart and plunge into a darker realm? What awaited her beyond that threshold? Despair gripped her, tightening around her chest as she spiraled further into the relentless night. Emily's heart thundered in her chest as she stared at the twisted parody of her son. Max's voice, sweet yet dissonant, hung in the air, taunting her. She stood frozen, trapped between the warmth of her home and the sinister embrace of the creatures awaiting her outside. The ghastly laughter echoed like a death knell, drawing her closer to the threshold. "Mommy," the figure repeated, its voice flirting with danger and desperation. It took a step towards her, and she saw the skin stretched too tight over its skeletal frame, the glint of malevolence in its eyes. It wasn't Max. Not anymore. "Stay away from me!" she screamed, the desperation clawing at her throat. She could still hear the chorus of taunts from the Thompsons and their children pulsing from the yard, overwhelming her senses. The sound of scratching nails sent a shock through her spine. The noise came from the door, a frantic rustling, eager to invade her sanctuary. What if the Thompsons tried to break in? Her heart sank deeper. She needed to protect her son. "Max!" she shouted, turning desperately to the boy now standing in her hallway, his hands hanging limply at his sides. "We have to go. Now." "I don't want to leave," he murmured softly, his eyes distant, the light inside them fading. Horror coursed through her. Was he trapped? Or was this thing in front of her nothing but a hollow vessel inhabited by something worse? As the figures outside howled with delight, Emily felt the room close around her. She bolted to the window, peering out into the sinister night. The Thompsons stood in a grotesque circle, their heads thrown back in mirthless laughter, shadows writhed behind them, flickering like flames. She turned to Max, his face a mask of confusion. "We have to go." In a heartbeat, dread twisted like a knife, seizing her heart. If she didn't act, she would lose him forever. Just as she grabbed Max's wrist, the door shattered inward, splintering into a storm of wood. The malevolent figures poured into her home, stretched limbs and twisted smiles, hungrily moving toward them. The air turned cold, draining any warmth left in her heart. "Come play, Mommy," the congregation of nightmares chanted, their voices harmonizing into a chilling rhythm that echoed through the hall. Footsteps smashed against the floor, ringing like the death bell for Emily's sanity. "Run!" She yanked Max behind her, fleeing towards the back of the house, the darkness at her heels growing bolder, more aggressive. But the house itself felt alive, its walls closing in, the doorways morphing into narrow chasms. Emily screamed as she lost sight of the rear exit, replaced by an endless corridor lined with mocking shadows. The Thompsons' laughter grew louder, their presence palpable, surrounding her like wolves closing in on prey. "Max!" She turned, searching for the reassuring sparkle of her son's laughter, but he was lost in the silence, swallowed by the madness that tightened its grip around them. She could feel a presence creeping up her back, an icy touch threatening to snuff out her last flickering hope. Emily stumbled, falling against the wall, the shadows stretching toward her. "Let him go!" she screamed, an animalistic roar spiraling from her throat. But as she pushed herself up, her mind raced with choices. Should she face the darkness and take a stand for her son, or flee into the surrounding night, leaving everything behind? Max's laughter echoed faintly in her mind, a tether pulling her back. It sounded so real, but the laughter outside twisted and contorted into a mocking choir. Then came the most chilling thought of all: what if Max was beyond saving? What if the face before her was just another mask designed to trap her? The grip of dread constricted around her as branches scratched at the windows with the urgency of teeth, yearning to gnaw at her sanity. Emily took a trembling breath, life or death hanging momentarily in the balance, when the shadows lunged forward. The world around her spun into chaos, each second stretching into eternity as she faced the terrifying unknown. "Mommy, help us!" they cried, blending into one voice, but the darkness taunted, "Join us forever." What was the cost of truth? And when would she find the will to confront them? As the shadows lunged forward once again, she braced herself, the fear coiling like a snake, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Emily felt the darkness envelop her, a net of fear tightening with every second. She turned to Max, but his eyes were void, deep holes where love had once dwelled. "Max!" she cried again, more a plea than a command. He remained motionless, lost in a trance only the nightmares could cast. In that moment, the laughter surged, drowning out her thoughts. It rose from the depths of her worst fears, reverberating through the walls of her home like thunder. The silhouettes of the Thompsons streamed into every corner, their faces twisted in grotesque delight. The shadows danced, buckling the edges of reality, creeping ever closer. "Mommy, don't you want to play?" The voice that slipped from Max's lips felt nothing like him. It was a wicked echo tainted by the very darkness surrounding them. Get away from him. Desperation ignited her heart. She lunged, arms outstretched, ready to shield her boy from the approaching tide. But her hands found only emptiness as Max's figure dissolved into flickering shadows. "No! No!" Panic coursed through her veins, every heartbeat a drum signaling her doom. The room shifted, the walls bending and swaying, swallowing the sunlight's last breath. The shadows pressed tighter against her, whispering vile secrets that clawed at her sanity. One scrupulous shade reached forward, its fingers gliding over her ankle, icy as death. Emily kicked back, feeling her shoes connect with something solid, an old chair, heavy and unyielding. With sudden clarity, she grabbed it, swinging the chair in a wide arc. It connected with the first twisted specter, sending it sprawling. The air thickened with a hiss of rage as more shadows surged toward her, flailing, furious at her defiance. "Mommy, you're hurting them." Max's words pierced her like broken glass. She turned to him, struggling to comprehend how he could betray her with that voice. "No. I won't hurt you," she begged. But the hands carrying Max's face morphed back into a twisted apparition, contorted and cruel. It orchestrated a chorus of howls filled with delight and malice, rattling her from within. "Join us forever," they sang again, drawing near, their fingers stretching, yearning to drag her into their eternal nightmare. Adrenaline surged. She threw the chair again, smashing it against the nearest figure. Yet, for every one she felled, two more emerged, creeping closer, their movements fluid like smoke. A wild thought flashed through her: if she could just reach the door, escape the snared familiarity of her home, there might be a chance. With trembling limbs, Emily bolted, the wood floor beneath her feet groaning under the weight of restless darkness. She dashed toward the corridor leading to the back exit, praying it would open up, praying it wasn't another cruel trap. The figures writhed in ecstatic frenzy, lunging for her as she ran. Desperation clouded her mind. "Max, I'm coming!" she shouted, but she turned back to find him still rooted behind her, ensnared in darkness, hopelessly lost. Laughter erupted around her, a symphony of madness that clawed at her insides, threatening to bring her to her knees. "Mommy, help us!" echoed from everywhere, again and again, tearing through her resolve. She took a desperate leap into the shadows, hoping to push through the confusion. Her hands clawed at the air, grasping for something, anything, to anchor herself. A window? A door? As her fingertips brushed against cold metal, she glanced back at Max, just as another shadow lunged and pulled him deeper into the abyss. "No!" she screamed, throwing herself against the unseen force that wrenched him away. Everything rippled like a distorted reflection on murky water. And then, silence. Silence that weighed heavily, a void where laughter once filled the air. Emily's breath quickened as she faced the vast nothing around her, an ominous stillness pregnant with unknown. Where had they gone? A whisper in the dark whispered back, "You'll join us soon." Panic surged back into her chest as she dashed through the doorway that had appeared like a mirage before her eyes. But what awaited her beyond the threshold? The foreboding sensation that she was being watched, that something was waiting just for her at the end of this escape surged through her. What awaited her was not the safety she craved, but a deeper descent into the horror she could never have imagined could she truly save Max. Or had she already lost him to the gathering shadows? Emily stumbled through the doorway, her heart racing as she plunged into the unknown. The air was thicker here, saturated with dread. Each breath felt like drawing in smoke, filling her lungs with toxins of terror. She glanced back, but the threshold she had just crossed shimmered and warped like a mirage, the laughter from the Thompsons echoing faintly behind it. Her surroundings were a nightmarish landscape of twisted trees that clawed at the sky with skeletal branches. The ground was a jagged mess of roots and stones, slick with something that glimmered in the dim light. An eerie silence hung over this place, almost as if the very nature recoiled from her presence. "Max!" she shouted, but her voice felt swallowed whole, lost to the oppressive darkness that pressed in around her. The last image of her son, his small body dragged away by shadowy hands, flashed in her mind. She took a trembling step forward, fear and determination battling for dominance. The trees whispered secrets in a language she didn't understand, rustling ominously as if gossiping about her plight. Shadows flickered just beyond her sight, haunting figments darting among the trunks like phantoms. The pulse of dread quickened with every shuddering breath she took. Emily pressed on, her feet moving on their own as panic twisted her insides. If Max existed here, he had to be close. Her fingers brushed against the bark of a tree, cool and clammy, sending a shiver down her spine. She paused, feeling a chill creep over her skin. "Max!" she called again, heart pounding in her throat, desperate for a response. But only silence replied, wrapping tighter around her like a tangible shroud. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of movement. A figure, pale against the darkness, slipped behind a tree. Help! It was a whisper, soft yet piercing like a knife carving through her skin. She spun around, straining to catch sight of it. "Max? Is that you?" Her voice trembled, echoing in the oppressive stillness. With every shaky step, dread corroded her strength. As if in answer, the figure re-emerged, closer now. It wore tattered clothing, skin stretched tight over its bones, a face obscured by shadow. Emily's pulse quickened. This thing was human yet grotesque, a reflection of everything broken in her world. "Join us," it rasped, voice like gravel being crushed underfoot. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to flee from this abomination. Emily's breath turned shallow, terror radiating through her body. "No! Where is my son?" she cried, and as if answering her, the figure's lip curled into a horrifying smile, revealing teeth that shimmered like jagged glass. Lost in the darkness, it stepped closer, and Emily recoiled, the back of her legs hitting something solid behind her. She spun, not wanting to be ensnared by whatever creature inhabited this broken landscape. "Get away!" She stumbled back, the world tipping and spinning, and her fear gave her the power to launch herself further into the shadows. Behind her, the figure laughed, a sound devoid of any humanity. It echoed through the gnarly trees, a promise of despair and an invitation into the abyss. Each moment felt stretched like a taut wire about to snap. What was this place? Why did it feel alive, as if it was watching, waiting for her next move? She sprinted forward, the dark forest closing in around her, branches grabbing at her clothes, fingers of shadow reaching for her flesh, holding her back, taunting her. Then, she heard it. A tiny voice drifting through the air, faint and familiar. "Mommy, help!" Each syllable made her gut twist deeper. That was Max. "Stay there. I'm coming!" she yelled, hope igniting just enough to push her through. She threaded between the trees, moving faster than she thought possible, the shadows trailing her like angry specters. "Mommy!" the voice called again, and it was closer. Emily's back prickled, as if she were being hunted. The ground dropped away. She found herself at the edge of a darkened ravine. The shadows surged around her, swirling like a storm, endless and ferocious. "Max!" she cried, heart racing as she leaned forward, peering into the abyss. And the shadows receded just enough for her to see him, his small form standing at the opposite side, tears streaming down his cheeks, a shivering reflection of pure fear. "Mommy, please!" The shadows licked at his feet, pulling him down. Panic surged, and Emily felt her grip on reality slip. Before she could process the danger, icy hands wrapped around her ankles. Terror shot through her veins as she fought against the pull. What would she sacrifice to save him? "Mommy!" The cry shattered her thoughts. The shadows writhed, hungry for her surrender. Each pulse of darkness promised doom, or salvation. Would she let them take him? As the void seemed to expand around her, a heart-stopping thought pierced the chaos. What if she wasn't the only one who could save him? Emily's heart thudded in her chest, drowning out the world around her. Shadows clawed at her, their cold breath wrapping tighter like a vice. She strained against the icy grip on her ankles, her mind racing. "Mommy!" Max shouted again, desperation lacing his voice, pulling her back toward the edge. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she felt the ground shift beneath her, a churning sea of darkness that refused to let go. "Hold on!" she screamed, her voice raw. She couldn't let the darkness win. She fumbled, trying to pry the phantom fingers of fear away from her legs. The ground beneath her was alive, undulating, shifting, trying to pull her into its depths. An urgent, wild thought surged: would she trade herself for him? Her breath caught. It was madness. But in that moment, the thought crystallized. Perhaps the shadows wanted her. Perhaps they could be satiated by her sacrifice. Would Max be safe then? Just as those ideas cascaded like a rocky avalanche in her mind, the grip on her ankles slackened. She twisted, lungs burning, and clawed her way to the edge of the ravine. There he was, so close yet so impossibly far. "Mommy, please!" he cried, his little body trembling, near the precipice where the dark was trying to creep up. "Max!" She finally saw the shadow's dreadful shapes writhing around him, reaching toward her son with clawed hands. They grinned with a malevolence that sent icy daggers of fear through her heart. With a desperate lunge, she broke free from the last of the invisible grip and sprinted across the uneven terrain. Adrenaline surged as she skidded to a stop before the yawning abyss, her eyes locked onto his terrified face. "Max, jump!" "No. I can't." He shook his head violently, eyes wide with panic. The shadows beckoned, their whispers growing more insistent, dive-bombing her senses. "Jump!" she urged, voice tense and raw. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony splintering her resolve. They weren't just creatures, they were memories, regrets, all the fears she had buried deep. As if sensing her turmoil, they surged toward her son, limbs reaching hungrily. Emily felt the encroaching darkness in her own chest, growing. It was suffocating. She grappled with the weight of fear and doubt. A glimmer of something bright and fierce pierced through the shadow. "Mommy!" Max's voice, so small yet full of life, ignited determination in her spirit. She could not back down. She refused to let him surrender. "Hold on tight." With a surge fueled by love, she stretched out her hands, the shadows writhing in protest at her resolve. Max took a step back, teetering on the very edge. "I'll try." "Don't try, D.O." she screamed, urgency coursing through her. With a moment of clarity, he propelled himself forward. Emily reached for him, heart pounding against her ribs. Time slowed as the distance between them shrank. And then, sharp as a knife, a great darkness surged against her. It wailed, vents of shadow erupting all around, trying to grab at her sanity, at her will to fight. A flash of blinding light erupted between them just as Max leaped, colliding solidly into her grasp. She pulled him close, cradling him against her, but that wasn't enough. Run! Now! With one hand holding Max tight, she spun around just as a monstrous shadow lunged toward them. Emily felt the air rush past as they sprinted through the twisted forest, branches snapping like angry hands trying to rake her down. They weaved through the maze of gnarled trees, Max's breath hot against her neck. The shadows followed, relentless, a swarm of darkness that roared with discontent, turning the air acidic and thick. Faster! She urged, adrenaline shooting through her like electric fire. But suddenly, just ahead, a bright beacon of pale light shimmered. An exit, a way out, but was it real? Max clung to her tighter, his small fingers curled into her flesh. Mommy, what if it's a trap? She paused, heart racing as uncertainty flooded her thoughts. Could that light be a sanctuary or another trick? The shadows shrieked, their hunger palpable, and Emily hesitated, her instincts flaring. What if? But before she could finish that thought, the darkness coiled around them, a cold grip yanking her back. Emily looked down at Max, terror reflecting in his wide eyes. Trust me! She shouted, and without further thought, she bolted toward the light, a final choice echoing in her mind. And as they rushed, yielding to the pull of hope or perhaps despair, the shadows howled behind them, their laughter slipping into an abyss of uncertainty. Would they find safety, or deeper peril? Because whatever that light held, she had to find out. The moment they crossed into the light, a wave of warmth enveloped Emily and Max, chasing away the cold whispers that had clawed at them. The brightness felt like a fragile cocoon, safe and inviting. But that peace wavered, replaced by an unsettling silence. Where are we? Max murmured, clutching Emily tighter. She took a careful step forward into the blinding glow. Around them stretched an empty, sprawling meadow, bathed in an ethereal light that felt almost too bright, like it was hiding something sinister. The grass shimmered unnaturally beneath their feet, the colors almost too vivid, too alive. Is this a good place? Cold dread washed over Emily. What if this was just an illusion, a cruel ruse by the shadows to lure them further into their trap? In the distance, trees stood like sentinels, their trunks twisted and gnarled, reaching toward the heavens. They felt familiar and yet utterly alien. The air smelled sweet, yet there was something acrid lurking below the surface. Mommy, Max's voice broke her trance. Look! She turned, following his little finger pointing toward an old, broken swing set swaying gently, as if pushed by an unseen force. The swings creaked, echoing in the unholy silence. Someone was here, he whispered, wide eyes searching the fading echoes of forgotten laughter. Emily nodded but remained wary, scanning the meadow for any sign of movement. Shadows still lurked at the edges, pooling beneath trees, whispering her name in voices that pounded relentlessly in her skull. Max, stay close, she ordered, heart hammering in her chest. She felt foolish for thinking they were safe. The shadows could easily reach them here, they just needed to find a crack in her resolve. Suddenly, a rustling came from the nearby bushes. Emily stiffened, instinctively pulling Max closer. What was that? A figure emerged from the underbrush. A child, appearing maybe a couple of years older than Max, stumbled into view. His clothes were tattered, dirt streaked on his cheeks, eyes wide and vacant. Help them, he croaked, at once pleading and terrifying. They need you. Emily frowned. Need who? Where are your parents? The boy's head tilted at an unnatural angle. The woods, they take them, he murmured. You must run, they're watching. The shadows around them seemed to shudder at his words. Emily started, but the boy raised his dirty palm, cutting her off. Run. His voice dropped to a whispered urgency, almost a cry. Before she could question the warning, the ground trembled as shadows erupted from the forest, tendrils stretching out like fingers toward them, hungry and ravenous. Run! She shouted, her voice echoing in the looming terror. They sprinted back toward the meadow. The boy vanished into the swirling darkness, and with him slipped the last possibility of sanity. Emily glanced back, seeing the shadows pulse and twist, a hungry maw waiting to engulf them both. "They're coming," she panted, pushing Max ahead of her. Fear ignited her legs, urging her to move faster, to escape the nightmarish grip that was tightening again. The shadows surged closer, filling her vision with nightmare images of faces twisted in despair, each wailing her name. Max stumbled, and Emily caught him just in time, hoisting him against her side as they found safety behind the remnants of a toppled stone wall, overgrown with ivy. "Stay here," she whispered fiercely, heart racing as the shadows danced just beyond their cover, flickering like a sick joke. Black shapes encircled the stone wall, squirming with a life of their own. But a deep, guttural growl shattered the air. From the shadows emerged something grotesque, an entity with hollow eyes and twisted limbs, glimpsing her in the dim light. Emily gasped, trying to shield Max with her body, but the weight of despair hung thick. "Mommy!" Max clutched her, eyes wide with terror. The beast let out a howl that pierced the silence, echoing in Emily's bones. "Run!" she yelled, throwing caution to the wind. As she bolted around the wall, adrenaline surged, cold and hot at once, an unstoppable tide. "Where do we go?" Max cried, tears blurring his vision. "I don't know," she shouted frantically as they hurtled toward the tree line, the shadows grasping at them like icy tendrils. And just when their escape felt inevitable, she felt the ground shift beneath them one last time. An underground rumbling, deep and foreboding, as if the earth itself was opening its mouth wide, hungry for the unsuspecting souls escaping the shadows. The sounds of chaos behind them clashed with the pounding in her chest. What lay ahead? Safety, or the jaws of something far more terrifying? They had to keep moving, but could they escape the darkness that had already marked them? Would she trust in the light, or dare return to the twisted terror that haunted their every step? The ground bucked violently, sending a shock of panic through Emily as she stumbled, barely managing to keep her grip on Max. She clutched him tightly, eyes darting around, desperate for a sanctuary in this hellish landscape. The further they ran, the more the quiet felt like a suffocating weight, pressing on their lungs. "Keep moving, sweetheart," she urged, forcing her trembling legs to race ahead. Max stumbled again, crying out as the grass seemed to claw at his feet. "Mommy! I can't. Just a little further. We'll find a way out." She didn't believe it herself, but denial felt like the only shield against the encroaching dread. The shadows wriggled, hungry for their fear, growing bolder with each passing second. Suddenly, the air shifted. A chill raced over her skin, and Emily's breath quickened, the sweet scent of the meadow taking a sickening turn. It twisted into something sharper, metallic, like rust and decay. "Mommy, what's that smell?" Max's voice, small and shaky, broke through her frantic thoughts. "Shoo." But she could barely mask the quaver in her voice. They stumbled into a clearing surrounded by the monstrous trees. Here, the suffocating silence morphed into whispers, soft and sinister, compelling and chilling. A symphony of hushed tones echoed through the trunks, wrapping around them like icy tendrils. "Max, listen!" Emily tried to focus, hoping she could catch some clue in the deceptive melody. "Help us!" An anguished voice drifted from the darkness. "They are taking everyone!" She felt her heart drop. Who was asking for help here? It felt like an invitation wrapped in a warning. "We need to get away from here," Emily said, hoisting Max up again, determination mixing with raw terror. But just then, a piercing shriek shattered the fabric of the night. It resonated through the air like the sound of something being torn apart. "Mom, what was that?" Max's voice quivered, his small fingers digging into her shoulders. "I don't know," she whispered, scanning the edges of the clearing. Shadows writhed lethargically, their movements reminiscent of dark, slithering serpents. "They wanted her. Help us please!" The voice echoed again, laced with something eerily familiar. Emily's breath hitched. Was it her own voice calling from the shadows, a phantom echo of her despair? "Run!" she yelled, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she bolted for the darkest edge of the clearing, half dragging, half carrying Max. The shadows recoiled, as if hesitant to leap into the bright, flickering patch of light that peeked through the dense trees. They rushed forward, slipping and skidding across roots that twisted like fingers. The shrieks morphed into laughter, high-pitched and manic, mocking her with every stride. Suddenly, a figure darted from the shadows, a woman, hair matted and frazzled, eyes wide with terror. "Don't you see?" she screamed, terror slicing through her like a blade. "They're coming for you. Get away." Emily's heart raced, and she glanced back just as the darkness surged forward, footprints marking a horrifying path toward them. A growl rose, rumbling deep from the pit of the forest. "Mom!" Max screamed, his grip tightening as they whipped past the wild-eyed woman. Then the earth below shifted violently again, cracks splitting the ground, dark fissures yawning wide. The shadowy figures swirled like a storm, unrelenting and insatiable, stretching closer with each heartbeat. "Mom, please!" Max cried, panic lacing his voice. "Trust me," she shouted, pulling him toward the nearest shadowed refuge, a hollow in an ancient tree that loomed like a gnarled giant. They ducked inside just as the darkness lunged, a wall of swirling shades crashing where they had just stood. The air inside was thick, heavy with dread, cave-like and suffocating. "Emily," a voice murmured, low and hollow, echoing around them. "You have to let them in." "Not now," she whispered urgently, blocking Max's eyes to shield him from the truths that lurked outside. But Max's face was pale, his small body shook with fear. Who has to be let in?" "Listen," she hissed, pressing her back against the tree's rough bark. The whispers grew louder, the shadows closing in on their makeshift sanctuary. "They know we're here, and we need to leave now." Just then, a sudden burst of silence fell around them, a heavy pause that dragged on forever. Emily held her breath, straining to hear even a hint of movement. "Mommy?" Max whispered, his voice barely a breath. The stillness was interrupted by an unsettling crack. A looming figure slowly emerged from the darkness, its ghastly grin flashing into the faint light. Hunger burned in its hollow eyes. "Come out to play," it crooned, an invitation draped in malice. A primal fear struck Emily deep. Was there no escape? Could they outrun a horror that knew their every fear? "Mom!" Max's voice was urgent, shaky. And as the shadows gathered to strike, Emily felt a sickening realization dawning within her. To survive, they would have to make a choice, one that could change everything. What would she sacrifice to save him? The whispers turned into a cacophony, voices overlapping. What were they willing to give to stand against the darkness? As the figure loomed closer, the question haunted Emily: could they keep their humanity in a battle where innocence was the first casualty? Would light reveal refuge, or prepare them for an even deeper dive into darkness? Max's grip on her arm tightened as the figure stepped closer, the stench of decay rolling off it in waves. Emily's heart raced. She couldn't breathe, the air choked with dread and despair. Every instinct screamed at her to bolt, but the shadows around them twisted and pulsed, forming a suffocating cocoon. "Emily," the figure rasped, its voice a serpentine hiss, "you can save him. Get away." She hissed back, but the command felt feeble. "Let me in," it coaxed, reaching out with skeletal fingers, cold as ice. "You need help. They want your boy. You can't fight them alone." "No!" Max cried, burying his head into her side. Emily could feel him trembling, his small body shaking like a leaf in a storm. The whispers surged to a fever pitch, a riot of tortured souls calling for release, blurring the line between reality and nightmarish delusion. Help us," a symphony of lost voices begged, each one a piece of a fractured puzzle. "Mommy, don't listen." Max whimpered, his voice cracking. As the figure hovered, its eyes alight with something grotesquely familiar, Emily felt a pull deep within her. It was as if she stood on the edge of a precipice, a choice teetering dangerously close. What if letting it in was the only way to save Max? But the cost, what would it demand in return? Max, close your eyes. She pressed her hands over his ears, yet even that felt like a losing battle against the cacophony outside. We have to be strong. Why won't they stop? He sobbed, shaking against her. Mom, I'm scared. The shadows pressed against their sanctuary, murmuring promises of safety mingled with threats of pain. The sound grew maddening, enveloping them in smothering darkness. Emily could hardly focus, her surroundings twisted into a blur of uncertainty. Join us, Emily. The figure extended its long, bony hand, its grin now stretched impossibly wide. You can protect him. Just surrender. No. She yelled, voice raw, the last of her resolve rising in a fiery flame. Get back. You don't own us. Suddenly, the air crackled, a surge of energy lashing back at her words. The shadows recoiled momentarily, like a tide pulling away from the shore. But the reprieve was short-lived as they surged forward, teeth glinting in the darkness, driven by a primal hunger. Mom! Please! Max screamed again, desperately clawing at her, tears streaming down his tiny cheeks. A thought flickered in Emily's mind, a faint memory of protection, of love, of a promise she had made to always keep him safe. She wouldn't let the darkness win. Not this time. Max, hold on to me. She shouted, pushing him further back into the hollow, her heart pounding like a war drum. Whatever happens, don't let go. An explosion of whispers erupted outside, vicious and high-pitched, echoing her fears. Each word danced on the edge of hysteria, threatening to pull her into their chaos. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, summoning every ounce of courage within her. Then she felt a warmth blooming within her, igniting like a flame that flicked off the dark. You don't control us. Emily roared into the darkness. For a heartbeat, silence filled the air, pure and heavy. But moments later, the ground quaked and groaned, the malevolent shadows contorting angrily as if struck. The figure hesitated, its grin twitching, revealing rows of jagged teeth. You think you can fight the inevitable? It seethed, rage boiling in its voice. Max, we're leaving. With that, she pulled him tight against her, stepping forward into the breach as the malevolent entity shrieked. Time and space bent around them, crushing in and popping back to reality. But just as they broke from the hollow, a sudden rush of weight pulled at their feet, a dark river of shadows, like quicksand, clawing at them with dreadful intensity. Mom! Max shouted as they stumbled. Then, as if slowing down to mock them, the darkness shifted, and in the fleeting moment before everything around them dissolved into a suffocating void, Emily glimpsed the eyes of those shadows. You could see the lost, the fearful, and the damned. What are you willing to give up? The figure howled as they began to drop, spiraling into the very essence of fear itself. And then, darkness swallowed them whole. Emily was aware of only one thing as all hope seemed to flicker out: she would find her way back to light, no matter the cost. But in this horror-filled cave of despair, the question loomed ominously: what would she have to sacrifice to escape the darkness? The shadows whispered their answer, a hiss curling around her heart. Come join us. Would she dare open the door to that temptation? Would the price be too much for even the strongest heart? Emily plummeted into the depths of formless dread, an abyss that spread infinitely in every direction. Her heart raced violently against her chest, a desperate drum beat against the crushing weight of imminent despair. But a fierce resolve gripped her. She would not succumb. Not now. Not to these monsters that thrived on fear. As she fell, memories flickered like fireflies in her mind. She pictured Max's laugh, the way his eyes sparkled with joy, the warmth of his small body nestled against her when he slept. I have to find you, she thought, raw determination igniting like a wildfire. Then, In an instant, a blinding light burst forth, and Emily felt herself catapulted upward, weightless free. The wholesome scent of earth and grass flooded her senses. She gasped, lungs burning, as she found herself standing again in the familiar meadow, the one touched by an ethereal glow. But it felt different now. The shadows loomed, writhing like angry serpents just out of reach. Emily's resolve solidified. They had followed her here, they were hungry. And she could hear them, a soft, sinister whispering in her ears. "Join us, no." She screamed back into the heart of the chaos. "I want to let you take my son." In that moment, she felt Max beside her, his little hand slipping into hers. "Mommy!" he cried, wide-eyed with fear yet exuding a gleam of hope as he mirrored her defiance. "Don't let them in." His voice anchored her, a lifeline as shadowy gales howled around them. These were no mere phantoms, they were manifestations of her fears, memories twisted into grotesque forms of despair. The Thompsons, creeping and smiling in their curiosity, every face of every lost child echoed through the oncoming tide, their wails growing louder, urgent and strident, reaching for something that they thought was lost. "We're stronger together," Emily shouted, gripping Max's hand tighter, the warmth of his touch igniting a spark of courage within her. The shadows hissed, a collective fury, their form rippling and shimmering. "Face the darkness," she bellowed, her voice reverberating through the meadow, a battle cry. She thrust her free hand into the grasping darkness, shoving back against their vile touch. The darkness recoiled, furious yet unyielding. In that second, Emily understood the shadows were fueled by fear and despair, but they also thrived on the idea of isolation. Together, she and Max made a barricade against whatever hungered to break them apart. "Max, we're not afraid of you," Emily shouted again, voice bright and explosive. The shadows hesitated, a brief flicker of uncertainty in their twisted forms. "You're nothing but memories. Come play." The shadows growled, voices mingling and distorting as they reached for her, claws outstretched. But Emily stood firm, yearning for the fleeting warmth she felt in the constant cauldron of dread surrounding them. With all her strength, she held her child close. "You're the light in this nightmare," she cried to Max, and she could feel the power behind her words. "Together, we are stronger than this darkness. Together, we can break free." Max nodded, uncertainty still flickering in his wide eyes, but beneath that lay acceptance. "We can do it, Mommy." Taking a deep breath, Emily pushed forward, her voice ringing like a bell, "You do not control us. You will not take away what we love." And suddenly, the shadows screeched in horror, a cacophony of lost souls merging into one. They pulsed, frantic and energized before ceasing their movements, entirely faltering as if they felt the strength of love that had taken root between mother and son. In that moment, rays of golden light burst forth from their intertwined hands, exploding outward, banishing darkness away like quicksilver. The meadow erupted beneath their feet, blossoming into vibrant colors as the shadows receded, dissolving into wails of anguish. "Keep going," Emily urged, pulling Max closer as they sprinted toward the newfound clarity. The shadows shrieked, the sound echoing in the vast expanse of the universe. They could see something ahead, a portal, bathed in clear light, shimmering as if inviting them home. Emily and Max sprang forth, the warmth enveloping them like a blanket, their breaths mingling with the high whistle of freedom. And just before they crossed into the light, Emily turned back. Faces flickered within the darkness, those she had lost, those who had suffered. Moments of fear and longing played across their features, but she held her gaze steady. "You are not forgotten," she declared, voice bursting with strength. With that, they crossed the threshold, the light wrapping around them. The shadows screamed one last time before evaporating into the void, and suddenly, warmth flooded her body. Emily found herself standing in her living room, the din of her everyday life surrounding her. There were the walls she knew, the familiar furniture. Max stood beside her, clutching her hand tightly, radiating relief. Mommy? Are we safe? Yes, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. We're safe. And as she hugged him close, she knew that love's light could conquer any shadow that loomed ever on the edges of their lives. They had faced terror, and together they had prevailed. But deep within her heart, a flicker of understanding remained. If they ever returned to the shadows, it would not be without a fight. They were not alone, and the love forged in courage would be their greatest weapon. Now, she turned to Max, let us never tell your father about those strange neighbors, okay? Okay, Mommy, he smiled, as the warmth of home settled around them, snug and secure. But somewhere in the back of her mind, a whisper taunted, the darkness might linger, always at the periphery, ever hungry. They were not entirely free, but for now, they had each other, and that was more than enough. Don't wait another second. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will chill you to the bone. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm so we can keep these spine-tingling tales coming. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this gripping conclusion. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this heart-pounding finale. You need to show your support today.